Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes and content. And, of course, check out the podcast and subscribe on whichever platform for podcasts you prefer. Really awesome show for you guys today. I was just blown away with this conversation. We hit on a lot of interesting subjects. I am joined on the podcast today by Burton Lee. He is the Executive Director of Business Operations for the Peterborough Petes. They're an Ontario Hockey League team, Major Junior Hockey. We're going to touch on what Major Junior Hockey is, what the OHL is if you're not familiar. But suffice to say, they are the biggest developer of NHL prospects, pro hockey prospects, as well as staff in really the world, in North America particularly. So we're going to learn a lot from Burton on how to do a lot with little resources, connecting with the community, driving revenue, surviving the pandemic. Just stick around because you're going to hear a lot about brand strategy as well, and just so much good stuff with Burton. I've known him for years, so I can tell you for certain he has a lot of good stuff to say, and you're going to hear about it. But first, before we get to my conversation with Burton, this episode's helpful tool. This helpful tool is a pretty simple one. I was looking for something that does similar to what Facebook Memories does for Facebook posts. And it is a Twitter Memories analog. And it is called On This Day. It's just onthisday.me. So just like it's spelled, onthisday.me. And you can check it out. It's Twitter Memories. And what you do is you authenticate with Twitter. And then you can look back every single day. It'll tell you what you tweeted on that day 1 year ago. So it's an interesting way to find some quick wins on social. If you want to keep up with anything that you think may be in your memory that can often be hard to find, the Twitter archive and search is not the best. But it's a simple little thing that you can pull up and maybe get some engagement, maybe get some memories, share some memories with fans, and see really what you were tweeting on this day a year ago. Be careful, it will tweet on your behalf unless you disable it. So go ahead and disable the auto tweets right away. You can do that in the settings section on the dashboard. As soon as you authenticate, go and click that disable auto tweet button so you don't have to worry about that. And then you can just check it out whenever you feel like it. Whenever you're short on content or just want to remember something that you feel like was recent or last year, and it's a great way to look back. So it's maybe not as robust as some of the other memories tools, but it's a quick and easy one. So again, on this day, on this.day.me, check it out. It's for Twitter Memories. All right, more importantly, stick around because a fantastic conversation ahead with Burton Lee of the Peterborough Petes. Back from this episode's opening segment, and I am super excited for today's guest, someone I've known for years now. Time has flown by, and someone I've had a great deal of respect for. My guest today on the podcast is Burton Lee. He is the Executive Director of Business Operations for the Peterborough Petes, Ontario Hockey League Major Junior Hockey team. We'll talk more about it. But welcome to the podcast today, Burton.
Neil, thanks so much for having me. This is a long time coming. I've been listening to the pod for a long time, and I'm honored to be a guest.
The feeling is mutual, very humbled by your words, and looking forward to picking your brain and learning because you cover a lot in your everyday role. I don't know how you balance it all, but you do a hell of a job there up in Peterborough, which for anyone who's not aware is in Ontario, kind of a suburb of Toronto, I guess, to describe it.
A dagger right to the heart of so many Peterboroughians, Neil. We are within suburb range. We're about an hour and 20 minutes northeast of Toronto, but that one cuts deep, my friend.
I'll do my best to make up for it. But hey, I'm from Los Angeles, and my address says Los Angeles, but everyone within a greater 200-mile range wants to say they're from Los Angeles. So I can see both sides of that coin for sure. But Burton, tell us about you. Tell us about how you got started in your career, getting experience while you're in school, the roles you've had along the way, and moving up to your position now, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Thanks, Neil. Great question. Yeah, for me, pretty typical start. Went to university, Wilfrid Laurier University, a small university in Waterloo, Ontario, for kinesiology. I think I was a classic kid, not a very good athlete, but loved sports. Went through high school, wanted to work in sports, really didn't know what that meant. And so followed a couple of friends to Laurier for kinesiology. I probably should have dropped kin within the first week, realized that wasn't a path that I was all that interested in. It was a very science-focused kin degree, not a lot of sport management or sport business. So I basically lived vicariously through all my roommates. I think I lived with 7 guys most of the way through school, and 6 of them were in the business program, which is a pretty well-renowned business program here in Canada. And I probably should have made that jump, but instead of being academic and doing a smart thing, I basically lived on academic probation, never went to my kin classes, and I'm not proud of this, but I got my experience during my undergrad outside of the classroom. Did a lot of work with the athletics and rec department, worked in the students union. Every event or fundraiser or student government initiative I could get my hands on, I would do. And it was really a great way to figure out, with the very low stakes, how to operate in the world of business. I'm doing the logistics for all the volunteer hiring on campus, and you're a student employee or volunteer. No one really cares what you do, so it's not like you're going to get fired or get reamed out anywhere. It's just a great way to learn. So that was my Laurier path, and I always found it interesting. They rebranded as a school in my senior year. And I believe the new slogan was "Inspiring Lives of Leadership and Purpose." And I'm like, I can get down with that, because none of that has anything to do with school. It's all about being a good person and trying to learn and impact the lives of others and do it in a fun way. And it wasn't about going to anatomy labs at 7:00 on Friday mornings. So that was great.
And Burton, I think something that'll be interesting to our listeners is the college athletics is really a truly American thing, and at least in terms of the scale. Like, did your school have varsity teams? Like, what's, because I think a lot of our guests will say, "Oh yeah, I got involved working in the sports department in college, and that's how I got going." That is not as, maybe it is an option, but just give me the landscape of college athletics in Canada and how it differs from the States.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Neil. And I'm fortunate, having worked for the Aspire Group, an American company, I've seen both sides of that. And you're right. The athletic departments in Canada, and Laurier is a pretty well-renowned athletic school up here. Yet I imagine none of the listeners have ever heard of it. It's just not the same. We had a great football team by our standards, and that meant we'd have maybe 1,000 or 2,000 folks come to each game. And that was really the big ticket, if you can imagine, compared to your D1 football, basketball, revenue gen sports down there. So no, not the same at all. From a career standpoint, it really wasn't. You didn't have those athletic administration degrees up here. We have a couple of universities and colleges that offer sport management degrees and diplomas, but it's not like in the US by any means. And it's not something where you jump into an athletic department and you really feel like you're part of a 7, 8, 9-figure business, and you could rise through the ranks there. We've got an AD on pretty well every campus in the country, but this structure, this hierarchy of 9 different assistant ADs that you'd see at a lot of the schools down there just isn't. It's a great career. A lot of people do it up here. It's just not something that I worked in the athletic department for 4 years in university, and not once did I think, oh yeah, I could do this for a living. It just wasn't a thing.
So you mentioned out of school, joined the Aspire Group. Let's keep going down the Burton career path.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I met my wife at Laurier, now wife, and she's a teacher. Moved to Thailand for a year to teach right after Laurier. They paid off some student debt, and I didn't really have a plan. So I followed her to Thailand. I started doing my MBA from Southern New Hampshire University, fully online program, and in sport management. And as I mentioned, my academics weren't great, so I was fortunate they accepted me, though I think they're probably a pretty easy one to get into, to be frank. But it was a good lesson for me. A lot of great courses. The academic side was really strong, and I could do it while paying down some debt and tutoring some kids in English and having some fun in Thailand. And when I got back to Canada, I started working for the Toronto Argonauts, Canadian Football League team. It was the year of their Grey Cup championship season. So a pretty big deal in the CFL world, which is a little bit of an oxymoron. But that was through the Aspire Group, an American company based out of Atlanta, founded by Bernie Mullen, one of the godfathers of sport marketing. So for someone that didn't really live and breathe the sport world, like a lot of people that enter sport do, it was really cool for me to get that perspective from someone like Bernie Mullen, who's done everything from Teambo in the NBA to teaching all the courses and literally writing the textbook, but also get the hyper local perspective of working for a Canadian team and understanding what ticket sales meant. So yeah, pretty standard still there. I got my first look in the ticket sales world, which is, as everyone knows, is the easiest way in. And I realized quickly that I loved the concept of sales. I didn't want to do it. I don't consider myself a salesperson, although I really do value the lessons and the theory that go into that. So I took a job with the Sarnia Sting, another OHL team that was also with the Aspire Group. I was managing their ticket sales department down there, assuming that working for another OHL team would give me some other opportunities in Ontario. There's 17 Ontario-based teams in our league, a couple in the States as well. And I figured if I moved into an OHL club, it would give me a great chance to spread my wings in this league. And eventually, when I wanted to get out of ticket sales, probably I figured it'd be 3 or 4 years down the road, I would have built a network and there'd be another opportunity in the league, in a different department. Lo and behold, 3 months into my time at Sarnia, the communications and game operations role with the Peterborough Petes opened up. Another common thread here, I followed my wife. She's from Peterborough and teaches in town here. So I took the director of game ops and comms role with the Petes, and that was 8 years ago. I haven't looked back. Executive director of business operations is my new title. We've expanded pretty substantially over the past 7 or 8 years, and my role's changed in lockstep, which has been really exciting to see. So I've been fortunate to have my hands on a lot of different departments.
You talk about coming up in a sales structure and certainly learning at the helm of the Aspire Group that they are really, really good and really well respected. What was that transition like as you went to communications and marketing and now in your role today, picking up all these other elements of just running the business overall? So like, how did that background help you? And what was that learning curve like as you had to add new skills and responsibilities?
Well, it was so important because the Aspire is such a learning organization. That was really their mantra. And I know there's a lot of other, companies that do similar to what they do, especially in the States, but Aspire really from day one was all about ongoing training and development. And they were true to those values. And so that stuck with me to this day. And I'm still in touch with lots of folks down there. And Bernie Mullen's offering consulting advice for free. I don't know if I should be advertising that for our new facility agreement up here in Peterborough. Like I haven't worked for him. I've been on his payroll in 9 years. So that's certainly not the first thing I'm sure that's going to get him out of bed in the morning, but that's the type of company they are. So, certainly a great inroad for any of the folks that are listening that want to get into the business. They really are a fantastically run organization. But those sales skills, whether you're in sales or not, are crucially important because it's all about communication and relationship building. And whether you're on social media and trying to engage a customer on Twitter or now TikTok or LinkedIn, you're effectively using all those same skills, whether it's your I, my statements or handling objections. So I've always loved trying to integrate the sales methodology into other avenues of the business. And on top of that, the learning component was just so important because I don't know anything about anything, right? I'm sort of faking it till I make it all the way through. And that's a little bit of the curse and the blessing of working for a junior hockey team is you get to do everything, but you probably aren't qualified to do any of it until you've actually done it. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, but it's great.
There's going to be a lot we're going to learn from you today. But first, I guess give our audience an idea of what junior hockey is, what the market's like, what the business is like. Just give us an idea of who the Peterborough Petes are in the greater sports ecosystem of Canada. Yeah,
so the Peterborough Petes have graduated more players and coaches to pro hockey than any other team in the world. So the easiest, although it's not really a fair comparison, would be call us, the D1 of hockey. There is a D1 of hockey. So I'm sorry to University of Michigan, all you folks that are crushing it on that side. And that's actually a good example. You'll see at the upcoming NHL draft in late July this year, a lot of Michigan players, I think, in the first round. But really, the Ontario Hockey League is the cream of the crop as far as the development of hockey players and coaches and support staff as well. Any given year, more players from the OHL graduate into the NHL and other pro leagues around the world, just because of our longevity and the reputation that we've built from a player development standpoint, and also the lack of some of the restrictions that I'm sure we'll talk about when it comes to the NCAA and the growth of the game in hockey, obviously compared to that of the States. But the Petes and of ourselves, we've been around since 1956, so we're the longest continuously operating franchise. Lots of players that people would be very familiar with, Steve Yzerman, Chris Pronger, those types of folks come through our ranks. And and really it's just a development league. That's what we're doing. We operate in pretty small communities. The teams that have always been based out of Toronto and their actual suburbs have never really fared very well, because at the heart of what the OHL and the Petes are trying to do is all about community. And on top of that, the OHL is a 20-team league. As I mentioned, there's 17 teams in Ontario. There's 2 in Michigan and 1 in Pennsylvania. And we're part of a 3-tiered or 3-league system with the Canadian Hockey League. So the Western Hockey League, there's another 22 teams out west, and then 18 teams in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. So 60 teams across the country, a couple scattered throughout the states, all just trying to pump players into the NHL.
It's not as confusing as it may sound, folks. You Google like Canadian Hockey League, you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. But long story short, it's primarily, I guess, 16 to 18-year-olds, primarily 15 to 17, and kids that are getting their development in hockey and ultimately end up getting drafted. Some while they're still playing in the league, and a lot of them will end up playing pro hockey in the NHL or elsewhere. Others will go on to other types of work, of course. But I think the Petes, as you spoke to, are a legacy organization. They've been around for a while, but like other junior hockey teams up there, they are very much a part of the community. You're not going to see too many Pete fans necessarily living on the other side of the country unless they've moved. So I guess when you have that close connection with the community, and you are basically a small business within the community, what is that relationship like with the fans? Who are your fans? Are you mostly talking to the parents and grandparents that are going to take their kids to the game, and especially these kids who see these players as superstars just as much as an NHL player almost? And so, I guess take me through who those fans are and how that may affect how you end up marketing to those fans.
Yeah, demographic-wise, Peterborough is the oldest demo in Canada by age. So from a social standpoint, it's always been interesting trying to figure out what our messaging is there. And, obviously you lean on your Facebooks to talk to the 50 to 64 demo. And but really on top of it, the challenge has been, what are we trying to say and to whom? As you mentioned, Neil, it's very easy to get wrapped up in, let's just try and be like Vegas or Carolina on the hockey side and be funny and cool and edgy on social media, but our fan base doesn't reflect that. And frankly, we don't have the resources from a people perspective to keep up with that sort of thing. So you end up doing it half-assed. And really our challenge as we've grown, when I started with 3 full-time staff on the business side, now up to 10 with really leveraging volunteers and interns a lot better. So you got about 20 or 25 bodies working at any given time. Now we're trying to identify the brand, and you've had some great guests recently talking about this too, like David Brickley from STN. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what the brand is, and you're just going to get lost. And so community has been a huge component to us, trying to take a very unique Peterborough community. If you've ever been to this city, it feels different than other places, and share that with the world. It is an old city, very transient in nature. Lots of people from here have relatives here. It's a cottage destination place. So a lot of people, especially Canadians, have been through here to the cottage. So the brand of Peterborough itself resonates with folks, and we really try to make sure that that's reflected in our social. The other pillars of that, the hockey hub, as I mentioned, we've been around so long, we've graduated so many folks through here from a hockey standpoint. We're really known as that hockey hub. There's a lot of the old folks, the term's a little bit passé, but most people that were born or played through the 50s, 60s, 70s called us the Petes Mafia, because everybody was from the Petes, it seemed like. And even now, high-ranking NHL executives either played or coached or worked with the Petes organization. So you've got that side of things as well. And we don't want to lose history. As you can imagine, as is the case with most sports orgs, your social media people are early 20s, your young millennials or Gen Z. They aren't all that tuned into the history, but even though we've got a bunch of early to mid 20-year-olds and I'm in my early 30s, a lot of the times we're not talking to people that are our age. And sure, we'd love to have more young fans, and we're working on that side as well, but our audience skews a lot older. So if we're not deeply aware of our own history and all the success that we've had, we're missing a really great way to engage. And you can see that on our Twitter but especially on our Instagram right now, even though it's a younger skewing platform, a lot of our content is geared towards a very visual look at all the cool things that have happened in our history. So yes, it'll strike that nostalgic bone with the older fan, the mom or the dad that grew up with the team, but it's also going to look really cool to see the Cooperall, the old pant, short, I don't know what you call them, and the weird helmets that we used to wear or no helmets. That strikes with the kids that are on the platforms too. So it's an interesting look, but it's really easy to get lost in it all, to be honest.
No, that's super interesting to think about how that social media content, because it's visual, it's almost funny or amusing or entertaining in some way, can have that hit that note for the older fans of nostalgia, and also hit the note for younger fans who are like, look at this crazy outfit or look at this crazy picture that I can share and laugh at and engage with. And I guess I was thinking too, as you were speaking about just the general older demographic that does tend to be the Pete's fans, the ones that are coming to a lot of games and paying a lot of the bills, so to speak. And I was thinking of the Days of Confused line of like, we get older, but in this case, you guys do get older, but they also stay around the same age as being older as well, because the Pete's have been around for a while. So you've had kids who grew up as Pete's fans that maybe moved out or moved back into Peterborough and now are that 50, 60-year-old range that were young at one point and Pete's fans. So like, how do you look at the sort of the lifespan of a Pete's fan? Like, do you find a lot of it really is just, let's focus on who we have that's here right now, whether they moved back into Peterborough, whether they lived elsewhere and retired to Peterborough, and trying to appeal to that fan base, and which is again very community focused as well, versus trying to build those fans for life. And what do those fans for life mean to Peterborough if they ultimately move away?
We spend a lot of time focusing on history, but trying to spin it into the present. So, whether it's an alumnus that went on to a Hockey Hall of Fame career, or if it's someone that played 10 games with us 4 years ago, but is now, a lawyer in town or a teacher across the province, there's always a story to be told. And so it's pretty important, as I'm sure you get from a lot of folks that work for smaller companies, to really have a multifaceted approach. And I think we're always trying to accomplish at least two things at once with our content. So yeah, as I mentioned, we want to provide that nostalgic kid about that player that someone watched years and years ago. But it's important for us to show that they're still relevant, or what they're doing now and where they are. So a lot of the content is based around that. I think if you look at a platform like TikTok that we're on too, it's the next stage in the life cycle is really differentiating that content. It's so easy for a small team to say, we're just going to copy and paste the same thing, all the same social copy across different platforms. And we know that's I want to be polite and say not a great strategy, but what type of strategy that is. So yeah, it's a great question, Neil. And I'm really interested in diving more into the data for our fans. We do see that transient nature a lot, as I mentioned, people that born and raised here, great family roots in this city, not a ton of jobs in Peterborough, unemployment rate's fairly high, blue collar town, sort of trying to figure out where we fit. And so people leave for college or university, but it is an emerging market in some areas. And so people will move back here, and housing is a bit more affordable than the greater Toronto area. So, now all of a sudden you've got that person that grew up watching games with dad and grandpa that are now 35 with their own kids. So you're potentially seeing 4 generations of a family at a game, which is really special.
I love that. And it really speaks to how you guys can activate that feeling of being a generational team. So it's almost, you almost want everyone that grows up in Peterborough or in a Peterborough Pete's family to want to come back one day, whether they move back or not, but want to come back maybe every single year and bring their kids to a game, bring their grandparents and kids to a game, and just have that generational experience with the family. And that can almost be, aspirational, but make sure that you're always on the hearts and minds of fans, no matter where they are and no matter how old they are.
Yeah, and it's really easy to try and I think to get lost in the fact that you want to highlight your stars. Mason McTavish is going to be a top 5 probably draft pick in the NHL next month, and a guy that's been a really standout player for us even before the pandemic when he was in his rookie season. But we know that every one of our players impacts someone. Every single minor hockey player in the city right now, except for one organization, is a Peterborough Pete. They all wear the same jerseys that we do. We license that out to them. It's a great marketing tool. And we send our players to their practices. Our players are in every school multiple times a year. And it doesn't, obviously we don't just send the star players out to visit the grade 5 classrooms. So we know that, and when I touched on the content earlier, we don't just need to focus on the handful of guys that have made Hockey Hall of Fame or the 200 guys that are in the NHL, because odds are the player that really resonated with a fan wasn't that guy. It wasn't Steve Yzerman, who only played for us for 2 years because then he was gone to Detroit. It was the guy that had a full 5-year career with us, much like you'd see with the NCAA that played his full season plus an extra for the football team and really ingrained himself in the community.
Oh, Bert, there's so many directions we can go here. I'm trying to figure out which turn I want to take, but I can totally relate to what you're saying. I remember very vividly at one of my jobs when I went out to El Paso, Texas to see a junior hockey team, the El Paso Rhinos, and being at a youth camp with them and seeing these young kids look up to these junior hockey players that many of whom won't ever play beyond the El Paso Rhinos, but to those little kids, they're everything. They're the heroes. And no matter what you are, if you're wearing the Pete's jersey, whether you are Mason McTavish or you are a player who's, his career is going to be over after the OHL, for that kid, that interaction, like especially the smaller you get with the team, those one-to-one interactions create those fans for life and instill that emotional connection that, and we talked about it recently, you and I, around these super fans, and you create a super fan for life right there. And the more you can have those one-on-one interactions with every player, that's huge, and that's how you develop that fan base for life. But I do want to shift a little bit. You mentioned TikTok as well, and I think TikTok is very sexy, of course, and a lot of organizations, teams, leagues will enjoy that first video that goes viral, whether it's the first one they post or not. People will have that experience of, okay, this one went viral. This one got whatever, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, whatever the volume is for your organization. So when you guys are thinking about what defines social media success, how much do you really have to parse through the numbers and not just seek the biggest number, but seek the biggest relevant number? If you go viral on TikTok, but it is, 50% of it is from people outside the country or on the other side of the world or in South America, wherever it might be, people that will never really be able to be a Pete's fan. Does that mean something to you? Ultimately, it's just, hey, a bigger number is always going to be a better thing, so let's shoot for it. Or do you look at those numbers and really have to scrutinize them more than, say, more than an NHL team, for example?
The thought that we're doing more scrutiny from an analytics perspective than a pro team is great, Neil. Thank you for giving us some credit. Yeah, we really try not to
just questioning those big numbers, I guess, and being like, okay, we did this big number, but how much should we really care about how big the number is?
We question everything for sure. But one of the questions, the meta questions, is how much energy and time do we want to invest in this? And maybe this is a bit of a departure from your typical guest, that we try not to spend too much time over analyzing. And I think if you asked us on any given day, we wish we had more time to do it, but I think we're still at the phase in our growth cycle, for better or for worse, where we're trying to put out as much content as we can that's relevant to our fans, and we have a pretty good sense of what that is at this point. And if something doesn't slap on TikTok, that's okay. We're okay with that. Frankly, I think we're one of 2 or 3 teams in our league that have TikTok at this point. And it's just, it speaks to the pandemic, but it's really just that resource load. So no, we really, obviously on the surface, when we're reporting our numbers to our board of directors, we are absolutely going to show those vanity numbers, how many impressions, how many followers we gained that month. But we know deep down that some content's just better than others. But it's sort of been skewed the last couple of years because the secret sauce for us has been anything to do with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we've got a couple players that have been drafted by the Maple Leafs. We did some viral content with Steve Dangle, who's a hockey-focused influencer up here, for those that don't know Steve. And that was just all organic stuff that our staff, DM'd someone about and made happen. We also drafted Liam Kirk, who is the only player that's really ever come out of England. He's born and raised and trained in England. He's now signed by the Arizona Coyotes. He was picked up by us in the import draft, which I don't think we need to get into that. But basically, we had England's best ever hockey player playing for us for a couple seasons. And it seemed like the entire country of England engaged in our tweets every single time we put that either England or the UK or Great Britain flag in the tweet. Like, it was as simple as that. And so we knew that if we wanted to get big numbers on social, we'd just do more stuff with Kirky. And to your point, Neil, yeah, that's probably not going to drive as much as doing some great local campaign and pushing. But we also sold boxes and boxes of custom jerseys to folks in the UK and shipped them over, and we did do some revenue generation there too. So long answer short, we really don't overanalyze our data, but we're also hyper aware of the fact that the vanity stuff's not all that important.
Yeah, no, I think the analysis comes probably up front saying, do we want to even be on TikTok? And then from there, let's have success on the platform. But the decision first is, do we have the resources and manpower and relevance to be on a platform in the first place? And I think what's interesting for you guys is you probably have on your roster people, that perfect demographic of the age for TikTok creators and people that want to be creating. And we're getting, as the generations get younger and younger, as they grow up, rather, we're getting, everyone is born as a creator almost. Like, you have a lot of people that aren't lurkers on social media, they're actually posting content. And you mentioned, some players will come and go. Some players will be there for, through their overage year, be there for 4 or 5 years. And so how much can you really make it about the name on the back as opposed to the name on the front? And there are Pete's fans, but there are also fans of players. That's not mutually exclusive. But can you really, do the players become front and center during their short tenure there, and then they're replaced by another superstar? I think it's a long answer just to say how we're seeing sports overall become more superstar driven, more name driven, more back of the jersey driven. How does that play out for junior hockey?
Yeah, I look at a brand like the Toronto Raptors, part of the MLSE portfolio, and the Raps locally here have done a really nice job of marketing their players through their corporate partnerships. So they're making sure that Pascal Siakam is in the Osmos Shawarma ad, instead of just throwing the logo on there. And so they're hitting that dual purpose of branding player and team, but also they're getting their bottom line with the CP sale. So that's stuff that we want to do a little bit more. But to your point, the front versus back of the jersey, you're totally right. It's cyclical. I mean, best case scenario, we'll have, frankly, a star player, but who gets drafted high to the NHL, but because he's just not quite a superstar, would actually end up playing for us for a couple of years after he was drafted from a development standpoint. Which isn't it's kind of unique for most sports, right? Typically, think NFL, NBA, like you're drafted and then you leave college and you go and play.
Probably most similar to baseball out here, to college baseball.
Exactly. Yeah. So, they continue on. For the most part, you're drafted to your NHL club, but you continue on for 1 or 2 years, unless you're Connor McDavid or really that top echelon. So that's best case scenario. Is there's all sorts of hype, and we could see it with a guy like Mason McTavish. Probably drafted first through fifth next month, and depending on who he lands with, may not make that roster, probably with us for at least 1 more year. And then all of a sudden you've got the guy who already had all the hype from the national media, but is still in Peterborough. And we saw it with Nick Robertson just before the pandemic. He was drafted by the Maple Leafs. He was their first pick, although in the second round. And obviously anytime Toronto does anything in Ontario, people are noticing. So that was great. But from a player marketing standpoint, it's probably not the focus. I'll give an example. Andrew D'Agostini was a goalie that played for us for 5 years. Good goalie, serviceable type of guy, but and had the longest possible career with the junior team that you can have. But he really endeared himself to the local community to the point where in the final playoff stretch in his 5th year, people were buying and producing merchandise with D'Agostini for mayor on it. the type of thing that you'd sort of see around a player that had been with a pro team for closer to a decade, really, really ingrained himself. Mm-hmm. And that's because he went so far above and beyond with his community engagement, starting charities and working with anyone that would call him. And that's such an outlier, Neil, for us to be able to have a player that we can brand like that and leverage. So it's got to be about the name on the front, and the players get that. So we try to strike a balance, and we try to help make sure that we're promoting what we can promote. But it's really, from a macro perspective, it's all about the Pete's and the logo and our brand as a whole.
I want to make sure we keep heading in this direction. A few more minutes left here with Burton Lee, Executive Director of Business Operations with the Peterborough Pete's. Burton, time is flying by, but we just talked about Andrew D'Agostini and his ability to work in the community. Maybe Mason McTavish is a known name right now around the community. He especially will be after the draft, even more so. We are sitting here right now in the middle of the summer down here in the States, where it's the summer of NIL, of name, image, and likeness for college athletics. You and I have talked about this a bit offline as well, just around how stuff's going to change out here. And college athletes, for the first time, will be able to go out and sign a deal with the auto dealer downtown, or go and do a commercial for a restaurant and make some money off their name, image, and likeness. You guys have had this reality. Players on the Pete's can be doing this, and you guys are thinking about it. You guys know who has the brand. You guys are making decisions on which player is going to go on this banner, and which player are we going to make a graphic for on social media and whatnot. So I guess there's a lot here we can cover, but give us an idea of what Pete's players currently are doing, can do. How cognizant are they about their brand building, and how they can get some nice muscle with them with the Pete's as well. And just ultimately, what's the state of affairs like for NIL out there, and what should we be ready for out here in the States?
No, you've got to be the only senior podcaster in the world to say, let's wrap up this podcast. Here's a question about NIL. How much more time do you have? Yeah, the short answer is really those rights have existed for junior hockey players in Canada forever. There's to my knowledge, there's really no restrictions on our players as far as them monetizing themselves, them getting engaged. Several of our players, we talked about Mason, he's got a deal with a hockey card company. I think it's Tops, but I don't know. So they can do all of that stuff. They can also do stuff through the team. So if we want to market the players through the local car dealer, we can. And we get those requests a lot, obviously. Then the star players are the ones that hit it. Well, all of our players they call them family advisors, sort of like a quasi agent. And so they can do all of those things. It's certainly a consideration of junior hockey, the OHL and the other teams in our league, is that a player can choose to go and play D1 at one of the U.S. college programs. And it's a different experience than it is for playing junior hockey. They have to wait 2 extra years, and they forego a lot of the development that they would receive. But there's certainly some clout to saying I played D1 at Harvard, or maybe the education component's a little bit more important. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance, Neil, to the differences there. We provide full ride scholarships to all of our players, even though we're not educational institutions. So there's probably more benefit from a monetary standpoint to the player for playing in the OHL. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be really interesting to see all the shifts that occur beyond just the NCAA with NIL and all the different changes that are going to come down the pipe. And from us, for our standpoint, we're paying attention. And I think we're really going to start to pay attention the minute, a Connor McDavid decides he wants to forego his OHL career because he just realized he can make a ton of money down at Penn State. So we'll see how it goes, but we're definitely keeping an eye on it.
You mentioned like having the family or the advisors, the family advisor, basically an agent, helping them make those decisions and helping them land some deals. How cognizant are the players now of, hey, I can get my Instagrammer up to 10,000. I can start making deals. Or, hey, can you give me my highlight videos so I can throw them on my TikTok and do something fun with them, or throw them on my Instagram stories, or even the whole every amateur athlete or young athlete now wants to get the check mark and be verified. Are they bugging you guys for help there? So I guess if I am, like, how how aware every day was a Quentin Byfield, the top draft pick recently, from the OHL, thinking about his brand and how he can monetize his brand while playing in the O?
I think they're very aware of it, Neil, but I think that attitude of hockey players of, as you said, the logo on the front's more important than the name on the back. They're very cognizant of what it's going to do to their image if they step out. And we'll have that conversation all day long, as you do, about, I wish hockey players would show more personality. I wish they'd say more, do more, be more. But I think so many are still caught up in that, especially as a 16-year-old entering our league. I don't really want to rock the boat too much just yet, even if I am a Quentin Byfield generational player. With that being said, also the scale is just not the same. It's I think it's easy to look at the US and see the dollars, but as of right now, as far as I know, a lot of these guys when they're 16 aren't getting offered those type of contracts or deals. So the payoff, the risk reward ratio is a little bit different. So, but they're very aware, and from the non-monetization standpoint, the blue check mark and getting their sizzle reel, they absolutely want it. And we really try to be proactive with that sort of thing as best we can. But I always find it funny. The players, they want the watermarked Getty image or the watermarked OHL images photo because there's some clout to posting on your story that watermarked image, like, wow, someone's actually taking a photo of you, not just even though it's high res. So that's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about kids. So I think they get it, and I think they're really going to start to get it when they see, the NIL stuff come down and as the world opens up a lot more. But no, our players are, well, let me use this example. When I started with the team, there was still a typewriter on the desk of our office administrator, and that was in 2013. So there's still a long way to go in terms of, I would say, monetizing and really professionalizing the amateur sport, the amateur league of the OHL. So I could see that being a big change in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and we're very much so only in the first period, so to speak, of having it not be too uncommon to have 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds that are making significant money from their TikTok, from their YouTube, from their Instagram, and so you're gonna get it more than ever in the years to come here, and it'll be interesting to track for sure. One more quick thing for you, Burton, and I promise we'll get this episode's terrible stat, but you and I can keep on going forever. I don't think I've looked at my notes once. I want to talk really briefly about the sponsorship side. We talked about obviously players working with partners, but for the Petes, you have ticket sales, you have partnerships. You don't have the same massive media deals that the major pro leagues may have. You have some media deals, but tell me about just how you guys have monetized sponsors both in the last year without games, as well as just the general landscape of how social media and sponsorship have emerged, have grown, both with the big name sponsors and also just as much with the mom and pop shops down the street that are trying to figure out what social sponsorship means to them and what they value it as.
Yeah, when the pandemic started, I think it really exposed a lot of this, Neil. And in my role, I'm doing everything from a facility license agreement in the morning and then HR policy in the afternoon. And I'm not really hands-on with either our sales cycle or the posting on our socials. But the approach we took all throughout the pandemic was threefold at first: rev gen from sponsors, data capture because we really wanted to farm a lot more data, and then just community engagement. And we realized pretty early on that we could drive revenue through community engagement, and data was going to be there all through it with every initiative we did. But the revenue generation was really going to come after the fact. So our focus shifted to those other two, data and community. And so how we generated revenue this year, but really how we did everything this year, was fill gaps. I know that it's been a little bit different in the States, but everything shut down in Canada and continues to be pretty well shut down. We're not doing live events inside. We're not even all that sure about when we're going to be at full capacity, and we certainly hope and we expect it to be by September for our home opener. But things like the Santa Claus parade in town, and this sounds probably pretty ticky-tack, but that was canceled this year, and it was normally run by a local service club. Our marketing team decided that we wanted to put on our own physically distanced Santa Claus parade. So we got 3 floats from a local sponsor and decorated them with Pete's historical stuff and really engaging music and lights. And instead of, because we're kind of audacious sometimes, instead of the normal 1-hour parade down Main Street, it turned into a 14-hour parade with our mascot. And I'm in the Santa Claus suit on a pouring rain, unfortunately not snowing day. That we visited over 10,000 homes that day, and it was unbelievable to see the qualitative response of countless people in windows just looking and going, what's driving down my street? Oh, what is it? The Pete's? Wow, cool. But now we're seeing, as we get back into season ticket renewals and CP renewals, people are referencing that type of thing. We did a few different variations of that, sort of fill the gap in the community initiative. People are saying, hey, what you guys did for the Santa Claus parade, what you guys did for your citywide Easter egg hunt, when you guys did that esports initiative, my kid was loving that, or my grandma hadn't seen another human in 3 weeks. And that was the first time she did. Thank you. And here's my, let's renew my deal. So I can't say that that's the driver, but we are going to see some quantitative impact to that sort of initiative as well.
Oh man, that's so heartwarming to hear. And I mean, I think we oftentimes try to connect community relations and all those CR elements to ROI, to revenue, and it's hard to put a price on it. But when you have those kind of interactions and it comes back and you hear that when you're calling them for renewals, for sales, whatever it might be, like it just goes to show that when you endear yourself to the community, when you show that you are a part of the community and want to help it and use your ability to help it, that comes back to you and it helps. It's really awesome here. And what a great I guess bow on top of talking about the Pete's throughout and how they really are an asset, community asset for the community of Peterborough. All right, Burton, we're going to hit up some overtime with you, maybe 3-on-3. No Connor McDavid, so won't be over that quickly. But we'll be right back with the shareable stat and before overtime. So we'll be right back with that. Gosh, I could have chatted with Burton forever, really. I looked at my notes very little because it's just a conversation between two friends who like to geek out on sports business and social and brand strategy and revenue strategy. Burton has his hands in a lot of places for the Peterborough Pete's, and he oversees a great organization there. And I really enjoyed being able to hear some of his insights. You're going to hear some more insights from him in our overtime segment, but first, this episode's shareable stat. And this episode's shareable stat looks at TikTok, and particularly time spent on TikTok. And in May 2021, in the U.S., looking at U.S. users, a lot of times TikTok stats are worldwide and not just looking at U.S., but in the U.S., TikTok users averaged 24.5 hours in the month of May. And the reason that stat is notable is because it was higher than YouTube, which is a pretty rare thing. If you look back over the last year, for the most part, YouTube continues to win out over TikTok in terms of time spent. But it's starting to take a dip. It was not by much, that 24.5 hours. YouTube is right around there as well, around the 22, 21 range. But it's an interesting stat to look at, knowing that, yes, the average session length for TikTok is very long. You're going to engage with a lot of different users and different types of content in a TikTok session versus perhaps a YouTube session where, unless you're going down a rabbit hole, you might be watching a longer form video or watching your favorite creator or brand or organization posting their videos. But it's one to think about for sure. Yes, on TikTok, you are at the sort of mercy of the For You page for the most part, unless fans go and follow you and seek you out proactively. But something to think about that as fans are spending more time on there is that element of needing to produce on a consistent basis. If you want to get in some of those 24.5 hours, and many influencers on TikTok, have talked about the not burnout, but the need to post very, very often. And TikTok will say the same thing as well, that posting often is a way to get in front of fans, of course, in front of followers. That algorithm is looking at engagement, but also a little bit of how often you're posting, frequency. So it's definitely a hamster wheel at times, and something to think about as you look at that strategy. You could be in front of fans every day of the month, every couple weeks, or you could be in front of fans, every once a month. Whereas on YouTube, you might be in front of fans by discovery, by intent. Very often, not as often. They may be willing to spend more time with your content than they are on TikTok. So yes, it's a very interesting stat, but one, just to start some conversations and to think about more deeply as to what kind of relationship you have with your fans on TikTok versus YouTube versus other platforms, who those fans are. Are they fans of your team? Are they just fans of your content? Are they just people that are fans of the type of content that you're producing for TikTok or for YouTube? So a lot to think about. We're not going to cover it all today, of course, but that's a central shareable stat. Again, in May of 2021 in the United States, TikTok users spent more time overall on the platform than they did on YouTube. So interesting one for sure. But stick around for an overtime segment with Burton Lee of the Peterborough Petes, because it's a fun one. Right back from this episode's shareable stat, and I am joined on the podcast again by Burton Lee. He is the Executive Director of Business Operations for the Peterborough Petes. Hashtag Go Petes Go. Burton, you kicked ass in your interview. Are you now ready to play some overtime?
I'm so excited for 3-on-3, Neil. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. All right, number one. I'm interested in this one for sure. Tell me, you've really risen up through the Petes organization and now lead a pretty big team there. Just tell me the most valuable leadership lesson you've learned in your career so far.
Oh, brand. And we still have a lot of work to do on this with the Petes. But if you don't define your brand, you're just going to be swimming in the dark. And so constantly trying to tweak ours, figure out what it is. And I think within the next 6 to 18 months have really nailed down exactly what the Petes brand is. And then it's going to be pervasive from player to coach to team to billet to everybody, on the business side, all playing from the same playbook.
So if I start tomorrow for the Petes, my first day, how do you go about instilling that brand in me?
Neil, you can come work for us anytime. I'll actually give up my chair so you can take my brand, throw it away to find a new one because you're way overqualified for us, my friend. But yeah, community, history, hockey hub is really what we're working on right now. And driven a lot by Shelby Cook-Collins, who's our director of marketing and growth and a rock star. She'll be a commissioner of a pro league within the decade, probably. So for us, we do include that in our onboarding training. And it's all about trying to take typically those folks that are in their 20s working for a sports team and ingraining them in what is such an amazing history of hockey, but also such a unique community that's not like any other in Canada or really the world.
I love that. It's well put for sure. Number two, this one should be interesting. Tell me the most impressive hockey player that you've seen play live in the CHL, the OHL. You can name one Petes player and one non-Petes player. I'll let you.
Okay, my shameless plugs are limited to one. Okay, non-Petes player has got to be Connor McDavid. Like he and I came into the league at the same time, or he was a year ahead of me, I think. And although he was cross-conference playing for the Erie Otters, we saw him once or twice a year, just as good as you think he would be, and so much better than everyone else. So got to go with David. For the Petes, it's hard. I mean, as you know, when you're working on the media and digital and content side, like you're watching the game through a camera lens or an iPhone, so you really don't get a great sense of it. But Nick Ritchie, who plays for the Boston Bruins right now, just bigger but also somehow faster, but also having a better shot than everybody else on the ice at any given time. So it's got to be Rich. Also had the best Twitter handle, which is Rich Boy with 3 eyes. I loved that. But yeah, we'll go with Rich.
I will definitely take that, former Anaheim Duck, which is close to my heart. And,
right.
And yeah, I mean, just to imagine Connor McDavid just schooling guys that are, older than him in a lot of cases. Just I can't even begin to imagine what it was like seeing that guy play. All right, number 3. Tell me the pro sports team or teams whose digital and social strategy really stands out to you and why.
Such a good question. I mean, we obviously love the Vegas and Carolinas out there. Mm-hmm. I think for me, I can't even nail down a team, I would say. So I'll totally cop out on this one, Neil. But who we follow are the non-hockey, non-North American Big Four, because that's to us where the unique stuff's coming out. Mm-hmm. And with our business model being a bit more community-based, not-for-profit, like it's kind of cool to follow like those third division, German or English football clubs, because they're probably a little bit more on par with the type of engagement that we're going to see.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I definitely come across my plate quite a bit. Some, Augsburg or some of these Wolfsburg teams that you may not have heard of it all the time, but do a great job in creative ways, both to engage their fans and monetize their fans as well. Now, I will tell you up there with MLSE, the teams under that umbrella certainly do a great job. The Raptors continue to blow me away with some of their creative over and over again. The Leafs as well.
The folks at MLSE are so good. Absolutely.
Number 4. We went into this a little bit, and it seemed like because of the Sidney Crosby-esque nature of hockey and being humble, it's not really an issue. But what is the dynamic like of a star player, of a Mason McTavish, being the guy that everyone knows and gets the publicity and gets potential commerce opportunities and card deals versus teammates that don't get those things? Does that ever come up as a part of the team dynamic?
A little bit. I mean, there's a bit of ribbing in the locker room, but our guys get it. I mean, they're not. It's not lost on them that, I already mentioned Liam Kirk. Kirk had an entire country cheering for him, and everything he did, they loved. And it wasn't even like a critical fan base. It was like, this is the only hockey thing we've ever produced, this guy. And they loved him, and rightfully so. So like our players, like you could have been Connor McDavid on our team, and you wouldn't have got more engagement or love than Liam Kirk did. So that's good. Yeah, no, like they get it. When the Leafs draft one of our guys, it's huge, and our players understand that. So they're all pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the same idea people have in mind out here is, in the NFL, Tom Brady's going to get a lot more publicity than his teammates are. And in college athletics, college football, the quarterback or the star running back, star receiver, whatever, is going to get more publicity. So it's not anything new, just like it's not anything new even in Little League when, the star player might get a little more of the accolades off the field as well. Not to the same degree, but this isn't new. I think a lot of people are kind of making a mountain out of a molehill, I guess is the thing.
For sure.
Number 5, we didn't talk about this, but I do. It's definitely an interesting part of really youth hockey in general, but certainly junior hockey. Tell me about the Billet family concept, what a Billet family is, and any and your best Billet family story. I guess who's the most well-known or famous Billet family for the Petes?
Yeah, so the Billet concept, all of our players for the most part come from outside of our community. They come and live here. We're not a school, so we don't have like a residence building or anything. So they live in the city with the local family. Famous, like nothing really famous. Like it's what I'll say about the Billet experience is if you're interested, you're Canadian, obviously listening to this, or if you have this in your city in the States, like if you love sports, but working in sports isn't for you because you don't want to work 90 hours a week or you don't want to make minimum wage, like become a Billet. That's the best way to engage with the players and the team because you're really their second family. Yeah. So yeah, there's we'll go offline with some of the stories about some of the Billet families because it's right. I mean, they see the best and the worst of everything. So yeah, but it's a really cool model. That's really a way that the players connect with the local community.
What's like the longest tenure Billet family? Like how many kids have they had come through their household?
Oh yeah, great question. I think, and we name lots of our awards after the Billets because they've been around forever. Like Vince Lonnie Garvey is good ones, and like decades. We're talking decades, and then so you see one or two players a year. Usually a player will live with the same family through their entire time. So it's kind of the same like 4 or 5 year cycle with the Billets. So yeah, there's people that have billeted from the time they were 30 till they pass away. Because our team's so old. So you end up with probably 40, 50 players through your time. It's pretty special. It's a really special relationship.
That's so cool. Yeah, it really is. It really ends up with a ton of great stories that is good stories for the Petes to be able to tell too about their players and families. All right, number 6, looking at just junior hockey in general, this is your chance. What's your bold prediction for the next few years or several years ahead about what junior hockey will look like in the future?
2021, and we haven't said NFT on a podcast yet. So NFT, Neil, NFT. No, yeah, we talk about it offline, like using non-fungible for ownership models and investment things like that. Really, like the running joke for the OHL has been like whatever happens in the NHL will happen here 3 years later. But I think you're going to see a lot of teams move to a community investment model as opposed to the traditional ownership. The finances make a lot more sense in that regard. We understand that having literal buy-in can create buy-in of all sorts. So I think that's a trend that you're going to start to see come down the pipeline as the economics of junior hockey start to change.
I like that prediction. That's a good one, and it makes a lot of sense too. Learning more about the Pete's model as well. All right, this is always a fun question that I'm going to ask with all of our guests. I'm going to ask you if all of a sudden you guys hit the lottery, have a huge donor come in, or just have a major financial windfall. How would you want the Pete's to spend that money, allocate that money?
We would make hockey free for every single kid in Peterborough. Actually, every single person. Let Burton and Neil play rec league hockey too. Yeah, it's, lots been said about the entrance to hockey and how inaccessible it is, and this is certainly true in the States. It's for good reasons viewed as a white upper class sport, and really detrimental to all of our brands because we just don't have the same resonance with folks that can't afford to play or choose not to or culturally won't. So, the more barriers we can take away from participation in the game at a young age, and anyone that's played it falls in love with it. It's so different. Just like the smell and the feel of the ice is just like something about it. So we know that if we can get more kids into the game, it'll yield crazy dividends down the road. But also just from like an inclusivity standpoint, that would be a really lovely thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point just in general about the participation element of it, and it is. I mean, I've been a hockey fan for life, and a very avid fan, and I could, you put me on the ice, I could not score a goal to save my life probably in a rec league game. But it's interesting to see that yes, participation is that key to especially winning over the young kids when they're first coming up and picking which sports they're going to be loyal to and which sports are going to win their heart for life. And so I love that answer. That's the best answer you could have had for sure.
Nice.
All right, time for the food question. So if I come up there, visit you in Peterborough, whether we go in Toronto or we're in Peterborough, tell me what's the best meal? Where are you going to take me to get some good food?
Yeah, I mean, Peterborough is, I think we're, aside from the oldest demo, I think the stat is that we have more family-owned restaurants per capita than any city in Canada. So a lot of small businesses, a lot of great restaurants. I'll give a shout out to Two Dishes, a good local spot, really small, but with great food. And I think they've been on the Diners, Dive-Ins, and Dives shows and all that before. So they get love. But Toronto-wise, a little more accessible for most of your listeners. Taste of the Danforth is great. I live just off the Danforth, a major street in Toronto, called Greek Town. And every summer they're going to get back into it in 2022, I hope. Taste of the Danforth is big. It's just like tons of gyros and all the good Greek food you could ever imagine, just on one street shut down. It's beautiful.
Ooh, that sounds good to me, man. You and I are there. Well, let's book it.
Yep.
This is I have to ask this one. This is gonna be fun. Tell me number 9. I noticed I didn't ask about poutine or anything in the last question, so we'll see if it comes up here. Number 9, the Canadian stereotype or trope that just everybody gets wrong.
Yeah, poutine, right? No, we do love it, and why wouldn't you? If you ever had like a true like cheese curd and gravy poutine, it's great. No, I mean let me go real here for a second off the board. I think a lot of Canadians, and maybe this is just something that we put on ourselves. Like we think of ourselves as the altruistic, better version of Americans, and frankly, we have a lot of negative history as far as colonialism, and if anyone's following the news, like you can see everything, discovering thousands of unmarked graves of Indigenous children from our residential school system. Like I know we're taking a turn here, Neil, but I think maybe this, as I said, maybe this is just a Canadian thing that we as Canadians ascribe to ourselves, but a lot of issues in our past as a country as well. And I think it's relevant because as a hockey team and as someone that works in hockey, we have a big platform to fix some of these things. And so you look at our social profile, and a lot of what we do, especially around, holidays, is talking about the impact and the history. And yes, we as a 65-year running team in the same community in the sport of hockey in Canada played a role in this stuff. So yeah, is that good, or do you want me to stick with poutine?
No, I think that's a really important topic to bring up. I mean, we look at just the last year in North America and the reckonings that we've had for good reason, and even before that, what was happening with some junior hockey even, of players coming forward and saying, this coach mistreated me, this coach called me this racial slur. And so I'm glad you bring it up, because we don't think about it as much up there in Canada, and especially dealing with kids that don't necessarily know what's right and wrong yet, or how to fight back or how to answer back. It's super important, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's in a conversation that we need to keep on having.
Yeah, and I'll give space to like, folks on our team. It's easy to see here as a small team because my desk is 2 feet away and in constant communication with the folks running our social channels. But for your listeners that are maybe running social for a bigger team or about to be, I understand like it's probably really challenging. You live on Twitter every day, you live on Tik, and it's like you feel as though your team should be making statements or talking about Black Lives Matter or any of the other social issues right now, and yet you don't feel like you have the power, even though you could hit send on a tweet. Maybe you wouldn't because you don't have the owner's sign off on that. And I would just empower any of the folks that are obviously listen to this pod are intrigued with social. Try and find a way to make that a reality because oftentimes, frankly, the people in the owner's box don't have that upward pressure on them because they don't live on social media every day and they don't realize just the gravity of what's happening, which is not an excuse, but it's there. So it's an interesting dynamic. What to do on social as a team in this ecosystem.
No, it's well stated. We talk all the time about people on the social front lines. They get it all. They have their finger on the pulse of what the fan base cares about, and frankly, to a higher degree of what society is caring about as well, and what they're expecting of the organizations that they support. And now more than ever, it matters that your organization is on the right side of history and supporting the right things. So it's super important for the people in every chair and most significantly the person on the social media chair that's seeing it all every day.
Yes, sir. Now we're into double time. Sorry. Double overtime.
Last one for you, Burton. This one should be fun. Which of Toronto's pro sports teams, or I'm going to leave out the Argos, much unfortunately for you. I'm not going to count. I'm looking at the major North American pro sports leagues. So we want teams that are in North America as well, or leagues that have teams in North America. Tell me which of Toronto's major pro sports leagues or sports teams, are going to win the championship next.
My staff actually had a huge debate on this one not too long ago, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I really don't have a pro team in any of the leagues that I explicitly cheer for. I'm more of an underdog than overtime type of guy. So the Jays, just with the young star power, seem like a hit. But man, what a tough league to win a trophy in. Mm-hmm. And the Leafs are perennial. Like it seems like it's got to be the Leafs just because they have so much talent. And I'll say this, you mentioned MLSE and gave them a bit of a shout out from the digital perspective. Like that is a very well-run organization, top to bottom, left to right. Mm-hmm. They're huge. It's easy. We all joke, anyone that doesn't work for MLSE says they're the Yankees of Canada. And that's true in a lot of ways, but like they're just good people up there. And everyone that I've interacted with from MLSE rocks it. And so you have to think that's going to translate at some point, much like it did with the Raptors championship a couple seasons ago. Same company, same leadership. They'll figure it out. Leafs fans, like, hold on to the bandwagon, folks. One more year, you'll do it.
How much did the Raptors win, I guess, tie fans over? Or is it still, we won an NBA championship. Let me know when the Leafs finally win a cup.
No, it was bonkers up here. And there's, there is crossover, obviously, same city, fans meeting, but it is, as you know, Neil, it's a very different fan demo, NBA to hockey, Raptors to Leafs. So I think, certainly the Raptors brought a lot of people on the bandwagon for that. And the parade was wild, but it's going to be a different ball game when the Leafs win a Stanley Cup. It was hard. It seemed like everyone in Canada was on the Raptors train, which is great. Yeah. That won't be the case with the Leafs because, for the most part, most Canadians hate the Leafs if they're not from the Greater Toronto area. But it's going to unite the city, and I think it's going to be really great for the game of hockey because you will see a lot of those marginalized folks that would never turn to hockey in their specific culture. I think they would, just because of how hype it's going to be in the city when the Leafs do win. And again, I say that as not really a Leafs fan, but it'll be cool.
I hope to see it too. But yeah, it's safe to say that the Raptors truly were Canada's team. The Canadiens or the Canucks, whoever else it might be, it's not that way, at least. It's not that way.
Oh, but Montreal, the Canadiens fans are going to be so happy. Well, they're already so happy to beat the Leafs, but if they can win a cup before the Leafs do, the chirp will be never ending. It's going to be hilarious to watch from the side.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. All right, Burton, we closed out overtime. You got a late winner just as the clock expires, so no shootout here. But we are going to let you take over the podcast for a moment and tell us your social media all-star follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're following.
Yeah. Oh, so many good people. I want to. Well, NJH287. I think it's got to be the best one. No, Erin Valois, someone that I recently got in touch with. She, managing director. Oh gosh, what's her title? But basically, she runs social for some of the biggest media outlets in Canada, and it's just really fascinating. Does a lot of stuff with the Olympics. So on Twitter specifically, her handle is eValois, Valois. Give her a follow. Hilarious stuff. She also does a weekly newsletter, free, super easily digestible, and I think it's called As Per My Last Email. So I'll give Erin some cred. She was referred to me by Sean Fitzgerald, the writer for The Athletic, and I know you had The Athletic folks on a couple of weeks back, Neil. They do some good stuff too. So maybe don't take my word for it, but follow eValois from The Athletic's point of view, because they know what they're talking about, even if I don't.
Very nice. I'll check her out for sure. That sounds like a great follow. And how about you, Burton? Where can we find you, as well as all things Peterborough Pete's on digital social media?
Yeah. At Pete's OHL Hockey for the most part. And actually, I think on everything now. And I'm Burton J. Lee. Probably a little bit more active on Twitter than others, but yeah, follow the Pete's, and that's if the Pete's are doing it, it's probably because myself and my small staff are working on it. So you'll know where I am.
Heck yeah, it's been just such a pleasure learning from you today, Burton, about the Pete's, about one organization in the OHL, a small business, but one that's extremely important to the community, and one that's been around for generations. How you guys operate in this age of social media as the fan base is ever changing, and it's super fascinating to pick your brain. I appreciate you giving us some of your time during this off season as we eagerly anticipate the 2021 season starting in the fall and getting games back once and for all.
Thank you so much, Neil. Love your pod. Can't wait to listen to all the other episodes except for this one.
It'll be great. Thank you so much again to Burton Lee, Executive Director of Business Operations for the Peterborough Pete's. Really appreciate the conversation. Thoughtful, articulate stuff, smart stuff. Again, he just has his hands on a lot of different things for the Pete's organization and does a great job. Has really done a lot already in his still young career. Makes me feel old seeing how accomplished he is at his young age. But he does a great job with the Pete's, and we look forward to continuing to watch what he does with the Pete's as the OHL gets back to playing hockey this fall. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horwitz. Find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content, and you can find the episodes and other content at dsmsports.net, or, of course, on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horwitz signing off with the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.